Hello, so today we are going to tier rank and review all of Tana French's books. If you're not familiar, Tana French is an author from Ireland. I believe she lives in the US now, but all of her books are set in Ireland. She has a series called The Dublin Murder Squad that has 6 books in it so far. I'm hoping she continues it, but then since then she has also done 2 standalone books. To start off with, just an explanation of kind of my categories. The top one is God tier. These are books that I think are just impeccable, amazing. And then there's the really fucking good tier, which is, again, books that are really, really good books. Not just good thrillers, good books. But they might not have quite the same spark as God tier. There's solid thrillers, which to me a solid thriller is, I remember it, it kept me engaged. It's a thriller means it did keep me engaged. I'm not going to remember it. It's a thriller. And then meh is, I just honestly didn't think this was that good of a book. So we're going to start with her most recent books and then go to her least recent books. I have reread the entire Dublin Murder Squad series. I pretty much have binged the audiobooks over the past couple weeks. I haven't reread the 2 standalone books, but they came out recently enough that I feel like I still remember them pretty well. So The Searcher is the first book on our list here. This is a standalone. I think it just came out this year. This is the story of a retired Chicago detective who moves to Ireland and is hoping to live out his, peaceful retirement dreams, but of course that doesn't happen, and a mystery unfolds in his area that he gets caught up in. This one was really enjoyable. It was very picturesque. It was kind of quiet, but also tense, if that makes sense. Yeah, I thought it was good. I think I'm going to put it in, it's a thriller, because I don't know how much this is going to stick with me ultimately. But, it could get upgraded in the future because it really hasn't been long enough for me to know whether it's going to stick with me. The next book is The Witch Elm. This is another standalone, and this is the story of kind of a young man who's kind of a brat. Something bad happens to him, and he kind of has to go back to his childhood home and figure out what his life is going to be like. Yeah, this one is going to go in meh because I did not like this book. All of the characters were unlikable and not in an interesting way. It wasn't for me, but I don't think it's a bad book. It just was meh to me. The next book is The Trespasser, and this is the last book so far in the Dublin Murder Squad series. The way that the Dublin Murder Squad series works is that you are following kind of a different detective each time, but they are all interconnected. So someone who is a side character in another book will be the main character in this one. So it's really entertaining to hear about these detectives secondhand, and then the next book you hear their perspective. And the difference in their perspective versus how they're perceived by other people is always really entertaining. This book is from the perspective of Antoinette Conway, who is obviously female detective, and she is, I believe, half black. And so that adds a whole aspect of conflict into her story that isn't really present in the other books, and so I thought that was really interesting to be explored. She is a side character in the book before this, and I had really wanted to know more about her, so I was really happy that this was from her perspective, and I was not disappointed. As far as the mystery, this is the story of a young woman who is found murdered in her apartment, and at first it seems like it's going to just be like she was supposed to have a date and something happened and she got murdered, and then it seems like there's maybe going to be a much bigger mystery behind it. I do remember when I first read this book, I was really surprised by the outcome. So, maybe I was just clueless, or this one does have a pretty good mystery, you decide. So for me, this one is going to go in solid. I did remember this one pretty well, and I think that the nuance in the detective story makes it well worth the read regardless. The next one is The Secret Place, and this is set in a girls' boarding school. A young student from the neighboring boys' school is found dead on the grounds of the boarding school. And so the detectives are trying to figure out what has happened. It's been like a year and nothing has been discovered. So this one is kind of like dark academia, but instead of college, like most dark academia is, it's in like middle school, high school. And it was really entertaining, and I did like this story a lot. I didn't connect with it on a personal level like I do a lot of these, just because I think this might work better if you either had a really strong friend group or really wanted a really strong friend group in high school. Like, I think if you have more nostalgia for youth or childhood even, I think this might have a stronger pull for you. But at the same time, I did think that it was a good discussion of what it's like to be a young girl, to be really overly sexualized, to be treated like an adult in some ways and a child in others, and that kind of confusing time. I did think the exploration of that was really interesting. So this one is also going to go in solid. The next one is Broken Harbor, and this one I remember just completely like melting my brain when I read it the first time. I had no idea what was happening, and I just had to know. This is really dark. This is by far the darkest book in this series, in my opinion. It is a family murder. If you don't like family murders, just skip it because it's going to bother you for sure. In my first read of it, I remember just like being so focused in the family that I didn't even remember who the main character detective was when I picked this up the second time. But the second time reading it, I actually was far more focused on the detective story, and I did enjoy that the second time. This one's going to go in solid again because I think it was highly memorable and definitely a riveting read. The next book is Faithful Place, and this is actually one that I had reread several times before, and this is one of my favorites from this series. Actually, all the ones that are left are my favorites, so spoiler alert. In this one, a detective named Frank Mackey, who's actually not on the murder squad, he's in undercover, but he left home at like 18 or 19 and has never returned despite living in the same area. So when something is discovered in his childhood home, he kind of has to go back and uncover the truth of what happened with his first lost love and what is happening with his very, very messed up family. This one was just kind of more of a personal connection with me. I just really, really like the main detective, and I liked the story a lot. So actually this one is going to go in really fucking good because I like this one a lot. And next we have The Great, the Wonderful, The Likeness. This is my favorite book in this series. This is one of my favorite books of all time because it is my favorite thriller, and I just love it. It's another dark academia. It is about, college or grad school students. The author has said that she was inspired by The Secret History, but if you don't like The Secret History, and even if you don't normally like dark academia, I would still say that you should give this one a try just because it is a little bit different. To me, it's not nearly as kind of intolerable as some dark academia is, like, because it has kind of that like murder mystery detective story intertwined in there. To me, it kind of breaks up the egoism that sometimes is all that there is to dark academia. So this is kind of a situation in which one of those dark academia-esque groups of students, one of them has been murdered, and so the detectives are trying to determine what happened. Love this one. It is, to me, the writing of this one is just the best writing, I think, that is in this series. Such a light touch, but you also are so engrossed in this world. Potentially this affected me this way because I do romanticize kind of your 20s, I guess. Maybe like The Secret Place is for people who romanticize 10 to 18, and then the likeness is for people who romanticize like 18 to 30. I don't know. This is just my personal theory. But yeah, love this one. And then the last book on our list, the first book in this series, is In the Woods. And this is the story, again, this is a common theme in her works of detectives kind of having to go back to their home, but the main detective in the story has to go back to the place that he lived as a little child, and he did have a mystery that happened then. Now he has to solve this murder, and it seems like there could be, maybe, connections. This one is going to go in really fucking good because I was really, really engrossed in this the first time that I read it, and I have really enjoyed rereading it over the years. It doesn't have the same grip for me as The Likeness, but I do think it is very engrossing, very memorable. My one caveat is if you hate unfinished stories, then just skip this one. Just read some of the other ones, and then if you really like them, maybe come back and read it for completion's sake, but I don't want this one to put you off of the series if you read it and then you're like, I'm so frustrated, because the rest of them are not like that. The rest of them mostly kind of wrap most things up for you. This one does not. So if you hate that, just skip it. You can still read the rest of them. That's the other thing to note about this series. I recommend reading them in order because then you get introduced to the detectives in order, but you don't have to read them in order if you don't want to. There's no reason that you would need to. It's just fun in order to put together all of the relationships between the detectives, but that's really mostly the only reason. So, I think I'm happy with this ranking. We have our top dog. We have our two other favorites. We have the bulk of the series is under solid. Her two standalones so far, unfortunately, are my least favorites of her books, but that doesn't mean that I don't still recommend them, and that doesn't mean that I'm not still looking forward to whatever she comes out with. I just don't think they've had quite the same magic for me as the series has. Just some notes on the rereads that I have just done. When I first read these books, I was so focused on the mysteries that I was really not usually super focused on the detectives and kind of their narrative voice. But on these rereads, I was kind of able to pick up on more things than I had before, and I really felt like I was reading it for the detectives as much as I was for the mystery, because obviously I already knew the mystery. But I think that she does a lot of kind of subtle things with their narrative, and I'm not sure whether I'm reading too much into things, but for example, there are several books from male perspectives that I think would be considered, based on the way the character presents itself to other characters, they would be considered good guys, where their narrative is much more nice guy. There were two in particular that I can remember where the detective is kind of perceived as a nice guy, but every time a woman is introduced in the story, he immediately tells you like what she looks like, what her body looks like, what her face looks like, and sometimes even says things like, she was the kind of beautiful that was waiting to fade as the blossom of youth left her, or something, you know, like, but they were, you know, just acting like that was just the way that everybody perceives women. And the funny thing is, I didn't pick up on this at all when I read these the first time. So I don't know whether that's because I was a lot younger. I read these mostly as they came out the first time. So I don't know whether it was just an age thing and having more internalized misogyny at the time, or whether I was just too focused on the mystery. I really don't know why I didn't pick up on it, but it seemed really obvious to me this time, whereas there were characters that I don't think most people would immediately perceive as a good guy in any way, but they didn't do that at all. It was just like women were just people, you know? A woman character would come on scene and he would just talk to her or think about other relevant things, not what her body shape was like. If this is what she was trying to do, which maybe it wasn't, I thought it was really kind of a nuanced look at like nice guys and the male gaze, and yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. Also, the experience of female detectives on the squad and the white female detective that you follow versus the not white female detective that you follow, and the differences between those two experiences, I thought was really interesting. So yeah, I can't recommend Tana French as an author enough. I just saw that there's an interview with her and Marlon James on YouTube that I haven't watched all of it yet, but I was so excited to see that because those are two authors that I really, really admire, and so I will link that below also. So, have you read any Tana French? Are you going to? Are you not going to? I would love to know. So, thank you for watching, and feel free to subscribe if you'd like to hear more from me. Thank you.